You're tuned in to The Last Radio Show.
Welcome to The Last Radio Show. I'm John Lynch.
I'm Jen Riley.
So, I thought this week we might go Hollywood.
Ooh.
And I'm doing jazz hands as I'm saying that. It doesn't really translate into audio, but we're going to go Hollywood this week.
All right.
So I want to talk about actors who basically aren't really acting. They're just kind of being themselves.
Okay.
Now, what I mean is someone like, let's say, Al Pacino.
Right.
Great actor, considered when you see lists of the all-time greatest actors, he's pretty close to the top on a lot of those lists.
Mm-hmm.
He's just basically being Al Pacino in every role he's ever done, I think.
So you're talking about like outstanding actors that are themselves, right?
Yeah.
Like not character actors, but like
Right.
just someone that's like goes down in
right.
history.
This is,
right.
again, considered one of the greatest actors of all time.
Right.
But he's really just kind of being Al Pacino. And I think as he's gotten older, and the same thing can be said about Robert De Niro,
Well,
I think.
that was the first person I thought of, actually. when you said it.
And they always seem to go hand in hand. They, the Godfather and all their history together. But, it's funny, like, as they've gotten older, they've kind of done a lot of stuff where they're kind of being parodies of themselves.
Yes, absolutely.
They've both kind of drifted into more comedic roles as they've gone later, movies with Adam Sandler and, Meet the Parents and, all these kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Where they're basically playing the same guys they played in The Godfather or Raging Bull or, Dog Day Afternoon or whatever.
Yes.
But they're kind of just like being old curmudgeons kind of thing.
But that's actually what happens in real life. So it's really probably how they are aging.
That is true. But again, I don't know if they're acting.
No,
I think they're kind of, I wonder if like scriptwriters just say, you know what, we can get Al Pacino, let's write a script around his personality.
Right.
I don't know, like, when was the last role that you can remember him doing where he's like, oh, he's kind of going above and beyond?
Well, I'm not big on Al Pacino. I don't know a lot of, unless it's his really like big roles. But I was thinking of Julia Roberts also in that respect.
She's one too. Yep.
So they're genuine and they're good actors because you believe them, but you believe like Julia as a prostitute, Julia as a pizza maker, Julia, and they're great, but they are who they are. They're genuine.
She's still just being Julia Roberts in a lot of
and
these
I love
movies.
her, so that works.
I mean, obviously, these actors have created a personality. We don't know if this is really how they are. This is what they put forth in the public.
True.
But even when you see them on talk shows or if you get a chance to meet them in person, this is what they're putting forth.
Yes.
And so I think Robert De Niro and Al Pacino are the two that kind of jump into my mind when I say Jack Nicholson. Another one. Every role Jack Nicholson does. And I love Jack Nicholson. Yes. One of my all-time, probably my favorite actor.
Yeah.
But he's always just Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
If you look at One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and if you look over, the Joker, he's basically just kind of being himself, even though those are kind of crazy and demented people.
Yeah.
But he's kind of got
that
edge
just like
to him.
variations of himself.
Yeah, and I think now I'll give comedic actors a little bit of a pass because I do think if it's a stand-up comedian, if it's someone like a Robin Williams, his personality was so. But he even did like different roles.
Yeah,
he did serious roles.
He was more of a chameleon, I would think.
Right. I would say early in his career, he just basically did Robin Williams.
Yes.
But then, later in he did like a movie called 1 Hour Photo where he played a guy who was stalking a family, and Insomnia, I think, was another movie with, I believe, Al Pacino, as a matter of fact.
Right.
Where he was a serial killer, I believe, So, I mean, obviously going much against type with that. But a lot of his comedy stuff, he's just kind of doing Robin Williams.
Yes.
But again, it's great. It's phenomenal.
It is great.
Bill Murray is another one. Bill Murray.
These are all the people that we just love, and that's what makes them so so fantastic. They're just genuinely themselves.
Right. And you'll plop down your money to go to see a movie with them in it, which obviously is what the movie studios are thinking. And this is not a new phenomenon because there are guys. If you go back, like James Cagney, was always James Cagney.
Yeah, they just built movies around that type.
Humphrey Bogart.
Yes.
Humphrey Bogart always played, I think those guys were always like 50 years old. I don't think they were ever like 15 or 20 years old doing movies, even though they did.
Right.
And John Wayne. I mean, John Wayne there's a very famous movie, and I can't think of the name of it right now, but I know where he played Genghis Khan. I believe it was just called Genghis Khan.
Okay.
And it's hysterical because he's just being John Wayne, but in some
they tried to put him in a different setting.
They put him in, an outfit and, gave him some makeup to make him look Chinese, and it's brutal.
Right.
It's considered one of the worst movies of all time because But it was kind of a vanity project because he wanted to do something like that. Again, give him credit. He was trying to branch out, but he was still, you still would put a cowboy hat on him and he would still be John Wayne,
Yeah, you always laugh at those.
Yep, how you doing, Pilgrim? Let's go that way.
Yeah.
But, Clint Eastwood.
Clint Eastwood, another one.
Another one. And I think a lot of these ones that we've been rattling off, what I find is interesting, most of them are male. I know we mentioned Julia Roberts.
Yes, that's the one.
But I think they're mostly male actors. And they're mostly kind of cranky.
Yeah, Christopher Walken.
Christopher Walken,
Oh,
another one.
I met him in person. He's the same personality.
Right. Yeah. I think with him it's the voice too.
Yes.
He's got such a distinct way of speaking. That I think that kind of leaps out. But like someone like a Daniel Day-Lewis or a Gary Oldman, they're different every movie. They're acting.
That's so funny because my husband's favorite is Gary Oldman, and I'm like, I don't even know what he was in. and he says it's because you don't know, because
exactly.
you don't know it's him.
Exactly. He was in the sequel to Silence of the
Yes,
Lambs. I
that's
believe
the only one I knew. And
Hannibal.
yes.
And he's in such heavy makeup.
Yeah.
And I don't believe he's even listed in the credits.
Really?
Because he didn't want people to know. He just wanted to do pure acting and to do this kind of thing. And so I don't think it was until after the movie came out that people actually knew he was in it, which is amazing. But again, like there's Tommy Lee Jones, cranky old guy. Cranky old guy. Morgan Freeman, not so cranky, but an old guy.
Morgan Freeman, he popped into my brain too. Yes,
yep. He's the wise old guy.
Yes,
he's like talking like this and giving you the advice.
Although
he
didn't get into acting until he was older, so we don't know the young Morgan Freeman.
That is true.
He just was born this wise sage type of person.
Samuel L. Jackson, always angry.
Yes,
always angry. Always cursing and doing this. Joe Pesci.
I mean, Joe Pesci is
Pesci, always angry.
Now, how do you feel about Adam Sandler? I know he's the comedian type. But
again, he's doing his shtick.
Right.
So, I mean, but he's done some serious roles, too. He did where there was the movie recently where he was selling illegal jewelry and stuff like that. It was, and it was it's a dramatic role, and he was pretty good in it, and he was doing a serious role, and he wasn't, obviously doing the voices or any of the silly stuff that he normally does in his movies. But he's done some different stuff. But yes, 90% of it. I mean, if you watch, Wedding Singer, and if you watch Big Daddy, and if you watch, Happy Gilmore,
right.
you could say that's the same person.
Yes.
And obviously too, some of these people are such big stars, you can't get past that's Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, of course.
That's it's tough to really kind of lose yourself in the character.
Right, and his original movies maybe put his name and his brand out there, and then he just kind of recycled it, which is awesome because it was awesome when when he started. So I was trying to think of who else. Some women though. I need some women in here. Meryl Streep.
I got a list here. I got IMDb's top 50 actresses of all time. So Meryl Streep is number one on the list.
And she is a bit of a chameleon.
She's definitely kind of known for it. What's interesting is looking at the list. I'm comparing the 50 greatest actresses to the 50 greatest actors, and the actress list seems to be older.
Okay.
So number 2 is Katharine Hepburn.
Oh, right.
Ingmar Bergman is number 4. Number 3, Bette Davis.
Oh, my goodness.
Olivia
really?
de Havilland, Vivian Leigh, Audrey Hepburn, who I know is one of your favorites.
She is my absolute favorite.
I know Breakfast at Tiffany's, that's your favorite movie, right? Greer Garson, who I'm not even familiar with.
I don't know.
Suzanne Hayward, Elizabeth Taylor.
Wait, these are all.
That's
what
the
year
top 10.
Did you Google?
That is the top 10.
Wow.
Meryl Streep is the only one who I believe is still alive. I believe.
I wonder what that says about Hollywood.
The golden age of Hollywood. Judy Garland's number 11.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find the most recent. Joan Fonda is number 13 on the list.
Okay.
She's obviously still around and active, but it's been her heyday was definitely a while ago.
Yeah.
Jessica Lange, she's number 14. Julia Andrews at 15. Shirley MacLaine, Sissy Spacek.
Wow.
So
there's no new actors.
I'm trying to find somebody who's really recent.
I'm trying to think of who I would think. I mentioned Julia. I love Meryl Streep, but she was on there. What about Kate Winslet or those?
Kate Winslet, she was on here someplace, but I think she's number 30 on the list. Emma Thompson, she's still active.
Yes,
right? Yeah,
she's incredible.
Yeah, she's 31 on the list.
Right.
So those are probably the most recent ones. Jodie Foster, who's been around for a while, but she started very young, so she's still active. She's 28 on the list, and she does a lot of different. But again, I don't think there's any of these actresses that we mentioned. Grace Kelly, I mean, these legendary actors, and the current ones. you don't think of like Jodie Foster as like being Jodie Foster in a movie.
Right,
she is whoever she's playing in that movie.
True.
But whereas the guys, and I'll go through the list of some of the guys here.
Yeah, I'd be interested.
So who do you think is number one?
Number one, I would think Marlon Brando.
Marlon Brando
because,
is number one.
I mean, in
right.
history, right? The
And
Godfather.
he definitely was a chameleon. He did a lot of different stuff. Was a very strange individual.
Yes.
We might have to do an episode about him.
I mean, I read a book once. I was like,
we'll put that on the list. We've got to do a Marlon Brando episode because there's a lot of bizarre stuff on and off the screen with him. Al Pacino and Robert De Niro are 2 and 3.
Right.
Then Humphrey Bogart, Gary Cooper, who again always kind of was Gary Cooper. Anthony Hopkins.
Oh my! Another one of my favorites.
Yeah, he's great. He does a lot of different stuff.
He's a bit of a chameleon, but he can be scary, like in Hannibal, and then he can be like the father, that like the that you love.
Yeah.
So
he's interesting too, and I think he's drifted now and again because of his age, and in a way, this is kind of typecasting too. We're talking about in a way, even though these are big time celebrities and they don't really have to worry about typecasting because they can kind of do whatever they want. If Anthony Hopkins said, I want to play, whatever, they would let him,
Yes.
But, obviously he had such an iconic role in The Silence of the Lambs and that really, it's tough to see him and not think, I'm going to have your liver with farfa beans.
Yes. However, there are movies where you just love him and you want him to be your dad or your grandpa. And I find that fascinating to want Hannibal to be in your family.
It would be a strange family.
Yeah, it's just wild.
Jack Nicholson, number 7 on the list.
Sorry, where's Tom Hanks?
Tom Hanks, we'll get to him. Well, hold on.
Okay.
Daniel Day-Lewis is number 8. Tommy Lee Jones is number 9. Dustin Hoffman, number 10. He's done a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Morgan Freeman. We got Robin Williams, number 12 on the list. Very high for Robin Williams. I'm glad to see that. Gary Oldman, number 13. Kevin Spacey, who was known as a good actor, before his personal problems kind of destroyed his career. But
and then you rewatch his movies and you're like, that might have been him, like American Beauty.
Again, he played a lot of creepy characters.
Yes, and now you feel like maybe that
Seven,
was just,
and like American Beauty, like you said.
And maybe it was just his
maybe that's just how he is. We don't know. Yeah.
If you rewatch those, you get a little.
It's a little disturbing. Yeah. Christopher Plummer.
Von Trapp.
Yeah, Von Trapp. Yeah, exactly.
Von Trapp.
George Clooney. Again, he's kind of always George Clooney. I mean, he's.
I've never really seen him break out. I mean, I don't know, maybe, but no breakout.
Yeah, Clint Eastwood. We mentioned Joe Pesci. We mentioned James Dean. He had a very short career, and so that's not really fair to judge him. Samuel L. Jackson. We mentioned Sean Penn. He does some different stuff. Yeah, he does some different stuff. Tim Robbins, Denzel Washington. Tom Hanks is number 26 on the list.
I feel like he should be higher. Do you think he plays himself? Because I'm trying to figure that out. I was going through his movies, and it's always Tom Hanks, but it's so good.
I mean, Forrest Gump was obviously he was not, doing, and that's probably his most iconic role.
Yes.
And again, a guy who started out as a comedian was, in a sitcom and. Did stuff like Bachelor Party and stuff like that, and he took a turn to dramatic stuff.
Yeah, he's very good at his childlike persona.
Yes, I mean he's incredibly likable.
Yes.
I mean he did a great job playing Mr. Rogers recently, just a couple of years ago. Yeah, that was really good. Okay. And you believed it was Mr. Rogers, but again, I think there was also that bit like. Tom Hanks is kind of like Mr. Rogers.
Yes, right.
Because they're both
play like
extremely nice guys who are extremely likable, so that's kind of interesting, Russell Crowe, he does a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, he's like those big time.
Yeah. Johnny Depp, he can lose himself in a role. But he also does kind of play very similar characters.
Yeah, he's a bit twisted too, so I feel like that helps.
Yeah, definitely.
You can be a couple personalities in there.
Heath Ledger, who, again, had a very short career, unfortunately. Michael Caine, he's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Again, I feel like he's always Michael Caine.
Yeah.
But,
picturing
again, legendary actor, been around for a long time. Christian Bale, he does different stuff.
Yes.
He's
another one where you don't realize that it's him.
It's funny, I mean, obviously, I'm a big Batman fan, so I loved his Batman movies that he did. Before that, he did American Psycho. And I remember watching that after watching Batman. Like, I'd seen it before, but I was kind of rewatching it again. It was just on TV one night, and I watched it. And it's kind of interesting because you're seeing a guy who at that time you're thinking of as Batman.
Right.
plays somebody who's basically the Joker, kind of like the opposite of Batman, playing a psychopath kind of thing. And he was great in both roles.
Right.
So, he definitely... This is an interesting one because I think this is, again, somebody who's kind of drifted into a parody of themselves and a lot of stuff. Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, he was such a good. Remember, like Peggy Sue got
Oh
married.
yeah, sure.
Like,
Moonstruck.
Moonstruck, right?
Yeah.
And then he just does. Yeah, you're right. Now he's cast as himself.
You mentioned Christopher Walken earlier. I think the two of them are very kind of similar. They got this. Jeff Goldblum, I think, kind of fits into
now
that
I feel like
too.
they're put into movies to be themselves, like Christopher Walken's.
Right. We need Nicolas Cage. We need you to be a little nuts.
Yeah,
and,
let's put Christopher Walken in Pulp Fiction just for the crazy part, and then.
Here's an interesting one. Sean Connery.
Okay, Sean Connery. He's been around for a long time.
He's been around. Well, he's no longer with us.
Oh,
but,
right.
But he was, obviously,
Yes.
But James Bond.
When did he die? Recently?
He passed away. It was probably in the early 2000s, I guess.
Okay. I missed that.
Not recent,
Okay.
but he, obviously,
he's James Bond,
the original James Bond. And I think it's tough to not think of him as James Bond. And other stuff. He played. He played Harrison Ford's father, who Harrison Ford's another person we could talk about in the Indiana Jones movie.
Too, right.
Yeah, and again, Harrison Ford has kind of drifted into the grumpy old man persona.
Yeah, I find him a little boring. I've decided. I loved some of the movies he was in because he was supposed to be boring, but then some of the movies, I don't.
Interesting.
I don't know. It's terrible because I did love Indiana Jones.
Right. Oh, great. Yeah, absolutely great stuff. And that's a whole thing too because obviously they did the original 3 movies back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And then in recent years they've done a couple of reboots of it where they've had him back as an old guy.
Yeah.
And that's kind of those are kind of rough, to be honest with you. The most recent one, and Harrison Ford is, I believe, in his early 80s now. He was playing Indiana Jones as someone that age,
right?
And it's kind of depressing, honestly. He's kind of like he's like, oh, I'm getting too old for this kind of thing.
Yeah.
He's number 40 on the list, Harrison Ford, by the way. Leonardo DiCaprio. What do you think of him?
I actually think he is very versatile.
Yeah, I would say so.
I mean, he was like a little bit of a heartthrob, but then he kind of got away from that. I think he's kind of versatile.
Right.
Matt Damon, is he on the list?
I haven't seen Matt Damon on the list.
Matt Damon should be on the list.
Matt Damon is very good. You're right.
Actually does a lot.
Yeah.
And he doesn't necessarily always Matt Damon. I don't feel like when I see a Matt Damon movie, oh, this is Matt Damon.
Right.
Necessarily.
Yeah. No, he's not in the top 50 of the IMDb list. Okay. Well, we'll make a few phone calls on that. Michael Douglas. He kind of is always himself, I feel like. And even his dad, Kirk Douglas, too.
Yeah.
Some great roles, some great stuff.
But what the best,
I mean, Romancing the Stone, I guess, is like his legendary one.
Yeah, he's kind of cranky, too. What's with all these men playing
The guys
cranky?
are cranky, yeah.
And like being really successful.
Yeah. Here's a very interesting one. Nick Nolte.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of, went off the deep end a little bit.
Yes.
Had his issues.
What was his big movie in the 80s? What I'm thinking.
I mean, he started out in Rich Man, Poor Man. I know, like that was like he was in. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think
of
what
of him in my head, but I can't remember.
Right. Well, the picture I have of him in my head is like when he had his crazy hair when he was arrested, the mugshot.
That's right.
Which that was kind of that was kind of a turning point in his career. But again, he's been able to come back from it. But yeah, he's an interesting case. And now this one I think is a pretty good one in terms of someone who can do a lot of different things. Is Jeff Bridges.
Okay, I don't even know.
Yeah, I mean,
I know his name, but I can't think of one thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, basically, he was known for The Big Lebowski. That was his his biggest movie. But he's done a lot of different stuff.
Right.
And, he's kind of, again, you can definitely see his personality in a lot of his roles. Yeah. But it's, he can do some different stuff.
So what's interesting about this? When you mention certain people, it's like movies, they pop right into your head. And then others, I'm like, what were they in? Even though they were in 1,000 things.
Right. I think a lot of those movies can kind of mush together, too.
Isn't
which,
that
that's, definitely kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So who's your favorite actor? Male actor?
I would say Anthony Hopkins.
All right.
I've always loved him. I do like Tom Hanks.
Right.
And I do like Matt Damon. I don't know. I think those are my three.
Matt Damon's an interesting one. Yeah. He definitely, again, kind of like we were talking about Leonardo DiCaprio, early days, kind of a heartthrob kind of guy, kind of thing in his younger days.
He kind of went away from that. I think it was purposeful. I think he kind of likes to play different things. I think he plays around. I just think he's a good actor.
Right. And there was the whole group from that generation. Tom Cruise was with them.
I know Tom Cruise is not on there.
Tom Cruise is not on the list. He kind of does. Yeah.
I think his name is in the
basically.
Title.
Yeah, exactly.
Tom Cruise
Tom Cruise always runs.
Yes.
He always runs in all his movies.
Yeah.
And he always, he's done 9 Mission Impossible movies now, I guess it is, or something like that.
Yeah, he's definitely this. And you know what? Him and Sally Field also. There's a thing I call the Sally Field freak out.
Okay.
In every single movie, from like Soap Dish or whatever that soap.
Right.
That
I think it was Soap Dish. I think that was right.
Soap
Yeah.
Dish to Steel Magnolias. She has this moment where she just freaks out. Oh, Mrs. Doubtfire.
Mrs. Doubtfire. Yep.
And she just freaks out, and it's always the Sally Field freak out, and she like has to leave, and she's like crazy, and she's such a good actor, but like she always has that freak out.
I don't think. Let me double check the top 50 list because I'm very surprised she's not there.
I know there's a lot of missing people. That.
Yeah,
she's a good actress.
She's very good. She won a couple of Oscars, I believe, right? Yeah. I don't see her on the top 50 list. That's interesting. Julianne Moore. She's a recent actress. She's 37 on the list.
She's excellent. Now, who was your favorite actor? Did you know that?
My favorite actor. That's interesting because Anthony Hopkins is a great choice.
Yeah.
Again, just for Silence of the Lamb by itself, you could give him everything. I would probably say. I mean, Gary Oldman is really good. Again, in terms of just like somebody who I say like, wow, that guy can do a lot of different stuff. It's definitely him, I think, because he is very, very interesting. But I mean, again, most of these people we've listed, I like them. I mean, they're really good. Nicolas Cage, I get a kick out of. Recently he did. I mean, talk about an actor who played himself. He recently did a movie where he did play himself.
Oh, really?
Nicolas Cage with what was the name of the movie? I got to look it up now.
Know.
But he just did one where like there was an obsessed fan like hanging around with him, and it was a parody of himself.
Oh, that's funny.
It was it was really funny. And again, he was just kind of going over the top. Robert Duvall's another good actor.
Oh yes.
He's been.
He's what do you call it?
Obviously, the Godfather movies. Was where he first became big. Again, that was that early 70s group, all of them kind of part of the Godfather at one point or another.
Yeah.
But, who did so much different stuff. But, it's definitely interesting how many of these people, again, just kind of go through the motions of doing the same.
They play themselves.
Right. So, I mean, obviously they're pretty good at it. They know they know the role pretty well.
You know what's interesting? I find some of the British actors that are with American accents. I think those they don't get enough credit.
Right. There are,
there's the one I can never remember his name. He was in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. You remember?
Oh, Bob Hoskins, I believe.
Did you know that he was British all that time?
No. What's amazing is recently, and again, I got to look up the name now because I'm drawing a blank on his name. But recently, you can hear me clicking the keyboard right now.
By the way, I know that's not his most famous role, Roger
No,
Rabbit.
but I think it might be.
It just comes into mind. I know.
Colin Farrell. Recently,
right.
He played the Penguin recently in the most recent Batman movie and in the HBO series. And first off, he's in heavy makeup to look like the Penguin because Colin Farrell's a very attractive guy. But the voice that he does in that, it's kind of like a Brooklyn gangster kind of voice.
Is it good?
It's phenomenal.
Really?
Like he might get an Emmy this year for the role. He was that good in it. Yeah. But it's so funny. Like there are scenes like behind the scene things you can hear him talking with his Irish brogue. Like it's like, oh, can you get me a coffee there, laddie? And you're used to.
They don't break it.
Yeah, it's just hysterical.
But what about Jim Carrey? That they say that he did not break character in his films at all.
Right. Yeah. Especially when he played Andy Kaufman.
Yes. Why
and
isn't he? He should get a little because he's too comedic. Maybe.
I think he should be on the list. Yeah, he's pretty good.
The Truman Show was fantastic.
Truman Show is one of my favorite movies.
Me too.
That was really good.
Yeah.
That was really good, and he was excellent in it.
Yeah.
And he's done some more darker things too. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind was a great movie.
Great movie.
And he was very good in that, and very serious in it for the most part. It wasn't really
Kate
like
Winslet was
Kate
American.
Winslet was in that too.
Yeah,
that's
that was
right.
Some good acting in that.
Yeah, that was a really good, kind of an underrated movie, I think, too, because it was kind of a different style. That was the shaky camera before it was kind of a thing. That was one of the first movies to do that. But yeah, he was great in that movie, and shot on Long Island, as a matter of fact, in the Hamptons.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
Yeah, absolutely. But so Yeah, it's interesting to think about it because, again, this is not a new phenomenon.
But what's going on now with movies? Because I feel like people are not as recognizable. Like,
Right.
yeah, you do get shout outs to some like legends, but
Yeah, I mean, there's the whole.
there's just too much.
I mean, there's the whole. There's the Marvel universe where every actor has been in that. You got Paul Rudd, Robert Downey Jr.,
Right. Oh, Paul Rudd, I love
Chris
it.
Evans. And again, these are all pretty good. Those,
Yeah.
probably the most recent actors who you could say, but they're kind of like they've done so many of those movies in that franchise,
Right.
that they're kind of locked into it. And Robert Downey Jr. played Iron Man. Robert Downey Jr. played Sherlock Holmes, and basically it's Iron Man if he was Sherlock Holmes.
Right.
It's again, great actor,
Great actor,
great,
but right, he is.
and a guy who started young, had his career destroyed and
Yeah.
came back from it.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's a good
kind of
story.
an amazing story. And so we might have to do an episode about Robert Downey Jr.
Okay, yeah.
Exactly, Ally McBeal, but he was
right.
he sang in that show actually. But yeah, that was kind of his comeback actually. But
Really?
but that's
Yeah,
a story for
okay.
another day. We'll put a pin in that.
Okay.
So yeah, so those are the actors that I think are kind of maybe going through the motions a little bit.
Yeah,
maybe
let's see
they
who's going to be nominated this year. When are the Academy Awards, or did they pass? Did I
They're
miss it?
coming up. They haven't announced the nominations yet
haven't,
because
okay.
of the fires in Los Angeles
Yeah.
that have happened recently. They were supposed to announce it, I believe. We're right in the middle of January right now as we're recording this, so they were supposed to announce it like last week, but they postponed it.
I thought that I missed
Yeah,
it.
yeah, they postponed it because of what's going on in California. So that should be coming out soon. But yeah, it'll
Wonder
be
if
interesting.
anybody was on the list, or people we don't even know.
I'm sure. Hopefully, it's some people we don't know. Hopefully, it's some new people.
Yeah.
The Last Radio Show.
Last radio show.